There are times when you need to be bold, when you need to take a stand, when you need to be open, even if you're scared to do so. If you feel your soul pushing you to do something, you should probably listen to it. And I had that experience recently. So 8 women in my family were plagued by breast cancer. Several of them died in their young 20s. Unfortunately, a pretty bad family history there. So in fall of 2009, that was my alarm, sorry about that, guys. In fall of 2009, my mom took a simple blood test to determine if she had what's called the BRCA gene. So the BRCA gene is a gene that predisposes you to breast cancer. 84% chance of breast cancer if you have the gene. So more likely than not by a long shot. So my mom found out she had this gene about 10 years ago, and she decided to have a double mastectomy, remove all of her breast tissue. At the time, this seemed like a radical choice. There weren't as many celebrities who had come out and taken the same steps. So my mom, was kind of ostracized by some of the women in the community who didn't understand her decision. She didn't have breast cancer, but she removed her tissue preventatively. And I'll never forget, walking into the room that day after my mom's surgery and seeing her in the hospital bed. And she looked weak and she looked frail because she had just had surgery. But I recognized a strength, an absolute strength, and a power that my mom was able to say, I will never die of breast cancer. Pretty empowering thing that she did. So that very day, I went out, I took the same blood test as my mom. And I was 21 years old, so I was pretty young. I was a senior in college. And I never expected to get the call as soon as it came. It was Christmas Eve of 2009, and they told me, you tested positive for the BRCA gene. And a cascade of tears poured down my face. I ran downstairs, and my dad gave me a big hug, and he gave me the most sage advice. And he said, Kaylee, you know your weakness. Everyone has one physically in life, but you know yours, and you can conquer it, and you can be strong. And for 10 years, I waited, and I waited, and I worried. I decided I didn't want to get my tissue removed right away. I was a little nervous because at the time, I didn't have a boyfriend, certainly not a fiance or a husband. And I was like, I don't want to worry about that right now, having to tell a guy, I've removed all my breast tissue. I was just a little nervous about it. So, yeah, boy concerns, right? I'm sure you guys are dealing with that. So for 10 years, I did mammograms and MRIs. It was a very jarring experience to walk into Moffitt Cancer Center, cross paths with women who were ravaged by chemotherapy, strong women fighting this awful disease. For 10 years, I dealt with what I call creeping worry. There was the time in law school when I found a lump, and in law school, for those of you who go, maybe you who's interning at a law firm, you're always wanting to study. You don't even want to take an hour away from your studies, but I had to take an entire day away when they found the lump. It ended up just being a glob of tissue, but it was very worrisome. And there was a time they found a spot on my MRI during the election, and that was another worry. Fortunately, none of them breast cancer, so that was good. So I waited for 10 years, never found that guy, at least not the first 9 of those years, because boys suck if you haven't noticed already. That gets a big cheer. And then about 2 years ago, I actually met my husband on Twitter. So it can happen, the social media generation. We met on Twitter, met at a Southern restaurant, Justin Timberlake's restaurant in New York, and ended up playing pool at Trump's hotel. This was long before he was a presidential candidate. It's just kind of ironic. And now he's my husband as of November of last year. And so when we got married, we went to Moffitt Cancer Center together with him and my mom, and I decided it was time to have the surgery. So on April 28th, I penned an op-ed, Why May 1st, and it was on foxnews.com. Why May 1st is the day that will save me from breast cancer forever. Why did I come out? Why did I write this op-ed? Because of women who came before me, who made my experience easier. Women like Angelina Jolie. I'll never forget being a young girl, my mom calling me, Kaylee, go get a New York Times. Went and got a New York Times. Angelina Jolie had written about how she had the BRCA gene and she had this surgery. And it made me stronger going into this, knowing that other women had done this and kind of given some legitimacy to it and some understanding to the rest of the world. So I penned an op-ed on April 28th. On April 30th, I went on Fox and Friends, shared my experience. That night, I went to the Tampa Bay Lightning game. I ate a ton of ice cream and pizza. It was the night before my surgery. Had to eat a lot because at midnight I had to stop eating, so pigged out. And then the next morning, I went to Moffitt Cancer Center, to have my surgery. I was strong, I felt good going into it, knowing I had my husband, my family, everyone behind me. And I wore these socks to my surgery with little lemons on them, and that was intentionally. How many of you watch This Is Us? Do you know the show? A few of you. It's a great show. So there was a quote that really stood out to me, and it was, "When life hands you the sourest bunch of lemons, you turn them into the sweetest lemonade."
Hey everybody, this is Charlie Kirk, founder and CEO of Turning Point USA. If you liked this video, be sure to subscribe to our YouTube channel at Turning Point USA.